Thank you for joining Wars of the Rosies as we continue with the definition of the Great School, Part 8 of the Brotherhood of Man by J.E. Richardson TK. Chapter 8, the definition of the Great School. This brings me to the definition which the Great School of Natural Science has formulated to express its own concept of what it means by the Brotherhood of Man. By analysis and comparison, we shall then be in position to determine wherein, if at all, it differs from the various concepts already defined. Here is the definition. The Brotherhood of Man, the exemplification of moral accountability and the mutual discharge of personal responsibility among mankind. The purpose is to indicate a brotherhood of man that has come into mutual association for the express purpose of exemplifying something very definite and specific. That is, to live their lives in such manner that each individual shall seek to prove something of the most vital importance to the life and well-being of the brotherhood of which they are all members. This means that each individual member shall endeavor to accomplish something which each other member shall recognize to be of value to him and to all his fellows. It is therefore something which all his fellow members will approve. Hence, it is something that is for the general good of the brotherhood as such. In other words, it is something that will make for the perpetuity and continuity of the life and development of the brotherhood itself. What is this vital thing which each individual member seeks to exemplify that will be of benefit to each individual member, as well as of constructive value to the brotherhood as such? Moral accountability. This means that there is a moral order of the universe, that morality is as much a law of nature as gravity or polarity or attraction. It is, therefore, a matter that falls as definitely within the limitations of exact science as are the movements of the heavenly bodies. In this connection, let me call attention to the fact that, according to the findings of natural science, morality is the established harmonic relation which man, as an individual intelligence, sustains to the constructive principle of nature. It is an established relation, hence it is, therefore, a fixed and determined relation. But whatsoever becomes a fixed and determined thing in nature is a scientific fact. Therefore, morality is a scientific fact, as truly as is the fact that the earth revolves upon its own axis. These are both facts of nature and are clearly within the limitations of exact science. Moreover, the relation is not only established by nature and therefore scientific, but it is a harmonic relation. This means that it is constructive and in harmony with the constructive principle of nature. We have learned also that morality is not only a matter of exact science, but has definite and specific reference to the relation which man, as an individual intelligence, sustains to the constructive principle of nature. Our definition of the Brotherhood of Man includes the exemplification of moral accountability. What is moral accountability? It is man's recognition of the scientific fact that the relation he sustains to his fellows and to the constructive principle of nature is founded upon a moral order of the universe. This means that nature, or God, has established a moral order on the basis of exact science, and that man recognizes the fact of that moral order and holds himself bound by it and accountable to its requirements, and he proceeds to live his life in such manner that he shall exemplify his moral accountability under the law, in conformity with the terms of the definition of the Brotherhood of Man. The individual man must exemplify his own moral accountability in a certain definite way, along with each and all of his fellows, namely, in the mutual discharge of personal responsibility among mankind. Here, however, another profound problem must be faced, which but few individuals of the present day and age grasped in all of its scientific aspects and significance. Reference is made to the scientific meaning of the term personal responsibility, for the definition says that the individual brother must so live his life that he shall make it an exemplification of moral accountability in the mutual discharge of personal responsibility among mankind. Before it is possible for him, however, to do this effectively, it is necessary that he first know the exact scientific meaning of the significant term, personal responsibility. Since it has reference to a law which applies to and governs all mankind, it must be entirely clear that it has reference to each and every individual who becomes a member of the Brotherhood of Man. None is omitted. The very fact that the term personal is used establishes the fact that the kind of responsibility referred to is that which applies to each person. This means that every person who is a member of the Brotherhood of Man is necessarily bound by the character and quality of responsibility that applies to all members. Please note the important fact that the word degree is omitted. It has not been said that every member of the Brotherhood is bound by the degree of responsibility that applies to all members. Make special notation of this omission, for the reason that it makes a point of the most vital importance to the scientific exactness of the analysis and final summary. This point will be elucidated later. We come now to the term responsibility. What does it mean? As natural science uses the expression, it will be evident to every individual who is at all familiar with the general concept of the term, especially to those who are accustomed to using the term as an integral part of their own individual and distinct vocabulary, that it involves an obligation on the part of the individual, and this means to each and every individual of the human family to do or not to do the things designed or included in the obligation itself. Another point of vital importance is in the fact that the obligation to be binding upon those of whom it is intended must be a definitely fixed obligation. Otherwise, it is fatally lacking in stability and certainty, and falls below the requirements of exact science. We would not hold it binding nor worthy of our recognition if it were subject to modification or change at the whim of the individual to whom it applies. It is therefore clear that it must contain the element of fixity in order that it may reach the dignity of an obligation or a responsibility. This fact presents the problem of who shall fix such an obligation upon us. It must be evident to every individual capable of reasoning upon the problem at all that authority is the element necessary to fix and make binding an obligation upon the members of such an organization as the Brotherhood of Man. This means adequate, positive, and unquestionable authority. In this case, there are no qualifications. The authority must be absolute. It must be of such quality, dignity, and power that no man shall have the temerity to question it. But where, with reference to the individual man himself, shall we identify a source of authority that is adequate to sustain and enforce its decrees? Could you acknowledge your fellow man, even the wisest of them, as an authority of sufficient wisdom to command your absolute obedience to any degree he might impose upon you, regardless of its appeal to your intelligence or your sense of right? As the Scotchman would say, I have me doubts. We see this verification of this weakness of human nature in the fact that our fellows, many of them of high intelligence, wide knowledge, and great wisdom, have formulated and passed the man-made laws that constitute the body of our statutory laws. The very purpose of these laws is to fix upon men and women who make up the vast body of human society certain obligations. One of these laws fixes upon us the obligation that we shall not steal the things that belong to our neighbors. The great aggregate individual which we call the state of California, or Florida, or Indiana, sanctions this law against theft to give it authority. But does that fact prevent the individual members of society from violating the obligation imposed by these statutes? Even though the law provides severe penalties for its violation, men continue to steal from each other. The world over, they refuse to recognize the authority of man-made laws, and the men who are charged with the duty to enforce them do not succeed. The men and women who violate these state laws do so because they know that many of their fellows do the same thing and often succeeded in evading and avoiding the penalty which the men who made the laws prescribed. This fact proves to them that the authority back of these laws is not adequate nor convincing. It is possible to evade or avoid their penalties if one is clever enough, and those who are clever enough, or who think they are, take the chance and go on disregarding the laws and their penalties. In effect, these lawbreakers say to the lawmakers, "Catch me if you can." And in many instances, the individual is never caught, and the penalty prescribed by law is never enforced. This proves the penalty is not sufficiently fixed to be absolutely unavoidable. This is because the authority back of the law is not sufficient to command the respect of society. Is there any other authority that is more capable of enforcing its laws than man himself? Yes, there is one of which we know something. That is God or nature. We are using these terms synonymously. We know that the great universal intelligence whose laws govern the movements of the planets, including our Earth, is the intelligence back of all the activities and decrees of nature. We will, therefore, not be misunderstood when we use the term nature to express the authority that is more powerful than man, for we know that man is a product of nature and that her laws and decrees apply to him as well as to every department of his individual being. We come to realize from our own individual experiences that there is such a thing as nature's law. We know also that nature's laws are absolute and apply to all men. She is no respecter of persons. She makes no exemptions. Her penalties are just as absolute and just as inviolable as her rewards are certain and dependable. Moreover, our personal experiences have proven to us the fact that the penalties she fixes for the violation of her laws and decrees are inviolable. They cannot be evaded nor avoided. They are self-acting and automatic. However strenuously man may endeavor to do so, he cannot evade nor avoid even the least of her penalties. Whenever he violates one of her laws, this is because whatever penalties nature provides for the violations of her laws are fixed and immutable. Man has not the remotest chance of violating a natural law without suffering the exact penalty which nature has prescribed for such violation. In these facts, we have the positive assurance that her authority is absolute and hence it is adequate. Of course, we know that man may, if he so elects, violate any or all of nature's laws for the government of mankind, but we know at the same time that he cannot do so without suffering the penalties prescribed therefor. Hence, when man knowingly and intentionally violates a natural law, he knows also that he thereby invokes upon himself a penalty which nature has the power to exact and enforce, and that she will not shade nor mitigate that penalty in the slightest degree. If any individual deliberately takes a deadly poison into his system, he knows that nature will exact his own life as a penalty for this violation of her constructive law of individual life. If he does such an act, he does it well knowing that he cannot avoid nor evade the natural penalty. This is because he recognizes the absolute authority of the lawmaker, as well as the automatic certainty and inevitability of the penalty prescribed therefor. If a man deliberately puts a bullet through his own heart, he knows at the time that the unavoidable penalty for his violation of the law of individual life is death. He invokes the penalty upon himself, and nature is careful to see that it is paid in full. There is absolutely no escape. If the statutory laws carried with them automatic penalties, as inevitable and unavoidable as are the penalties which nature prescribes for the violation of her laws, it is certain that the conduct of men, in which their human relations, would greatly improve. This improvement would come as a direct result of definite knowledge that there is no escape from the penalties of violations of the law. For illustration, if a thief knew in advance that the penalty for stealing his neighbor's purse would be confinement in Sing Sing prison at hard labor for a term of 10 years, and then in spite of everything he might do to avoid that penalty, he could not do it, he would have the most powerful reason to exercise self-control over the desire and impulse to steal that purse. If, however, he believed that he could steal it and escape the penalty, he might take the chance, as many people do take such chances under present state laws. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to share, like, subscribe, and comment. And if you can, please consider donating to Wars of the Rosies. Links to PayPal and Patreon are in the description. Thank you so very much.